welcome back to For St. Pete's Sake, a political conversation podcast brought to you by the Stonewall Dems of Pinellas County. My name is Laura, and I'm one of your hosts. I'm the VP of Stonewall Dems, and with me today, as always, is my co-host Christian, who is the president of Stonewall Dems.
Hi, Laura. How are you today?
Oh, doing awesome. Why don't you tell us about who we're talking to today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to let her to get into introductions herself, but um, I'm pretty excited because we have Kristen Browde, who is the president of the statewide LGBTQ Democratic Caucus here in Florida. So I'm really excited about this conversation today, and I really want to jump right in if you're okay with it.
Yeah, let's go right ahead. Hi,
All
Kristen.
right. Hi, Kristen. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right in. Kristen, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you started with the LGBTQ caucus and how you became president.
Well, the way I became president was I ran for vice president 3 years ago, um, thinking that I hadn't been in Florida long enough to really know the scene, to know the players. I'm a New York transplant, and I moved to Florida back a few years ago when we had pretty much done the work in Florida of making equality under the law a fact. We had, with the cooperation of the state legislature and terrific cooperation from our then governor, Andrew Cuomo, subsequently in a little bit of hot water and now back again. But Andrew Cuomo for our community was a superhero. He is the one who brought about marriage equality back when there was still a Republican majority in the Senate. He still got it through, still signed it into law. And once we got a Democratic majority, both houses of the legislature, we were able to finally move all the pro-equality legislation, and he signed it into law as fast as we could get it to him. He was just terrific. So we had done all that work, and my youngest child graduated high school. And I thought, okay, I no longer need a big house in New York. Where can I go that'll make a difference? So my partner and I said, should it be California or should it be Florida? Because we both like sunshine. And we decided that Florida was where the real movement work was that needed to be done. So we chose Miami. And we came down to Miami, and I had no idea how bad things would get and how quickly. But literally the first thing I did before I even moved in, on the way down, driving down with my son from New York to Miami, we stopped in Fort Lauderdale for a demonstration on trans rights when Joe Latipo, the Surgeon General, was trying to impose absurd regulations on the state of Florida, which he did. They got overturned to an extent, but he did. And when DeSantis was going nuts about the transgender community. So I went to get involved with the party and obviously with the LGBTQ plus caucus, because I'm an out trans woman and, that's not going to change, obviously. So I ran for vice president of thinking that the one thing I'm good at is organizing and making some noise. I had spent most of my adult life as a reporter and anchor and turned lawyer. So I knew a little bit about, how to communicate with legislators and how to work with a government, because we'd done it in New York and I'd done it on television. Came down here, went to work, ran for vice president, and unexpectedly, in my term as vice president, the president of the caucus, a trans man by the name of Nathan Broomer, decided to run for state legislature. And to do that, he decided he would resign. So all of a sudden, I found myself as president of the state caucus. Really, about 3 years after I'd arrived in Florida, I'm thinking, okay, we got work to do. Things haven't gotten much better, but we can do this. We can organize. And that's how I got here.
Awesome. So it sounds like you have been really involved in New York. What got you into politics to begin with? What's your origin issue?
Well, my origin in politics was when Trump ran the first time. I had
Okay.
been a television reporter and anchor. I had never been a member of any political party because I grew up in an era when reporters just didn't do that.
Yeah.
You were expected to be straight down the middle. You know, the way we said it at the first television station I worked with was, we give it to you straight. Fox bought that, Rupert Murdoch bought that station while I was there and turned it into Fox. Needless to say, I didn't last very long. But that was where I was coming from. Trump ran for office. I had just left the media. I had come out. I was practicing law. And when he won, I got involved in the Women's March, the original Women's March, where a huge number of women, I mean, well over 1 million, descended upon Washington, D.C. And the energy was just freaking amazing. As a matter of fact, I didn't expect it, but this is the sign that I had there. I still have it.
Wow. You cannot take
You
my
cannot take
rights.
my rights.
I'm
still using them.
Yeah.
I love that.
That was my sign from the Women's March, and right after Trump got elected the first time. And I came back to New York. And I'm like, okay, what do we do now? So I heard about this new group called Indivisible that was organizing. And I thought, they're having an organizing meeting. Let me go check it out. So I go driving down to this little church, probably 10 miles away from where I lived. And I didn't, I thought it'd be like 20 people. There was a line outside the church going around the block.
Wow.
I'm like, okay, this is good. So we get in there, and they broke us up after the organizing, the big rah-rah speeches. They broke us up by town. And I found myself in a group of about 40, 50 people from my town. I didn't really know that many of the people, but they're talking about, we got to run for president, we got to run for Congress, we got to do this, we got to do. I'm like, no, that's not what you have to do. What you have to do is run for school board. You have to run for town board. We have to take back at the local level. And at the end of it, a couple of people who I didn't know said, can we talk to you for a minute? And I said, sure. And it turned out that it was the chair of the state, of the county legislature, the head of the Democratic Party in my town, and the deputy head. And they said, would you run for town supervisor, which is their version of mayor?
Oh, wow.
And I said, excuse me? One of the couples that lived in our town included the candidate who had just lost the presidential election, the Clintons.
Oh, wow.
I said, let me say to you what I see as the problems here. Are you sure you want to, as a Democrat, nominate an out transgender woman to run for mayor in Hillary Clinton's hometown just after she's lost? And they said, yeah. Now, I had been on the town's ethics board, right? I'd been on the school board's finance committee. I'd done plenty of things, but I'm like, excuse me, I don't think you know what you're getting into. I mean, we're a small town, 17,000 people. But do you know what a storm you're going to be creating? And they're like, what do you mean? It's just a local election. I'm going, it's Hillary's hometown. Well, we had 9 television cameras at my campaign announcement.
Oh my God.
In a small town election. It was all over every newspaper in the city. It was, and I couldn't get away from being the transgender candidate. I was the Democratic candidate. I was also nominated by the Working Families Party and what was the other party? Oh, the Women's Party. I had 3 nominations, but I was running against a 2-term Republican incumbent, and I came up about 375. But that's how I got started. I got jammed into it, and then they started appointing me to things.
Right.
And once you've started on that, you're appointed chair of this, chair of that. Life's going to be complicated.
Yes. No, that is actually that's really interesting that the party in in that moment, in that time, really decided to lean in. And lean into, yeah, just lean into what, into the core of our party. And I think actually that actually leads right into a really good question that I have for you, is how does it feel being someone that, is an activist, has dedicated yourself to the party, working with the party to get people elected and to, on the national, local, and state levels. But, after this most recent election, there's been a pivot, and it feels like that the Democratic Party is starting to turn their back on our trans friends. I'm Gavin Newsom's first podcast episode that he had Charlie Kirk on, and I'm sure
Yeah,
you heard, yeah, they got into the women and, girls,
yeah.
kids in sports, which like is such a red herring anyway, but like I just, yeah, how does
Gavin
that feel as someone that's worked for the party and is working for the party?
Newsom became the former contender for the presidential nomination in that conversation.
Agree.
Um, those remarks, look, Democrats have to understand. Let me answer that on two levels. One is personally, but first on the Democratic Party. If Democrats cannot learn to pivot out of a stupid conversation, they deserve to lose any election they're in.
True.
We'll get back to why it's a stupid conversation. In terms of Gavin Newsom, he should have known better. First of all, what the hell is he doing with Charlie Kirk on his show? Or Steve Bannon, who we also had.
Yeah.
You will not win as a Democrat by trying to be a Republican. Those people are not going to vote for you, no matter how far to the center you think you're tacking, no matter how far to the right you think they are not voting for you. Trump is still calling you Gavin Newsom.
Right.
That ain't going to change. It is a losing game to not be Democrats. If you're a Democrat, if you have core beliefs, what's wrong is you don't stick by them. And that's why Chuck Schumer, who endorsed me and who I endorsed, is in trouble.
Yep.
Because you cannot win by being a milquetoast. Now, I don't care if you're a progressive Democrat, a centrist Democrat, a compromising Democrat, a problem solver. If you don't stick up for what you believe in, you're useless in politics. Your voters are going to know, your constituents are going to know that you don't mean anything, that you don't stand for anything. And if you can't stand up and say, no, I'm sorry, the fact that there are 8 transgender athletes, of whom 6 are women, out of 512,000 NCAA athletes, is not some sort of affront to anyone. It is not unfair to anyone. And if you can't push back when a tied for 5th place finisher in an NCAA event goes complaining about, oh, I should have had 5th place to myself, cut me some slack. Then you aren't very good at your job, which is convincing the voters that what you're proposing is right. And what you're proposing shouldn't be based on transgender people. What it should be is based on the democratic principles of good jobs, good pay, a good economy, safe communities for people to live in. And that means all people, not just white Christian males, but everybody. Equality is not something that you can have unless everybody is equal. And that is irrespective of their skin color, irrespective of their national origin, irrespective of the way they express gender or have gender. You cannot be a Democrat if you don't get on board with the core principles that I assume you believe in, because that's why you became a Democrat. And if you're going to say, oh, well, Republicans might be upset, Republicans are going to be upset with you anyway.
Exactly.
They're going to be upset with you anyway. And if you cannot sell the idea of a good economy with good jobs, fair pay, and communities we want to and can all live in, then you can't be a very good politician, and you should go home and let somebody else step up.
Yeah, that
Sorry
is
about
so well
soapbox
said.
there. Sorry about, I
Yeah.
can get pretty passionate about that.
No, it's
No, the passion is great. We love to see the passion. While we're on the topic, I kind of want to ask, as a leader within the party, you're a leader within the state party here in the Florida level. But where do you see the leadership of the Democratic Party going? What would you like to see out of whoever becomes the future nominee? Or do you see a potential future nominee?
I'm
even
worried
for
that
governor.
we haven't done the work. We haven't done the work at the local level to build up a state bench that is the people who are going to be going up. When we see Republican turned Democrat, I'm sorry. No, I don't want to see another Republican turned Democrat. We saw that with Charlie Crist,
Right.
and he wasn't very good at it. And none of these other ones are either. We've tried it in all sorts of places. Republican turned Democrat. I welcome them into the party. I do.
Yeah.
And if they want to get up and show their creds, great. But they got to start winning at the local level before they start running for governor. And that's where we're weakest right now. I mean, we've had some terrific candidates. I think of Val Demings as
Yeah.
outstanding. I mean, there's no reason why that woman should not be in the United States Senate, especially when you look at what we have now.
Right.
Absolutely.
Marco Rubio's opponent, not as strong, but well, and I love her. I mean, I thought she ran a great campaign, but we have to be willing to get out there and do the work and build the bench. And right now, I haven't seen anybody who's like, oh yeah, I'm going to get behind them for governor. Not yet. I hope I do, because getting rid of DeSantis and anything related to DeSantis, and if Ottmeyer is going to be their nominee or whoever it is, we can't. Florida cannot take another 4 years of this crap.
No.
It's
agreed.
All this distraction, all this, oh, well, we gave away $1 billion of money. We haven't dealt with Medicaid. We're seeing cuts coming out of the federal government that are going to put people out on the streets, that are going to cost people their health care, that are going to cause our children to be less educated.
Yeah.
And that's what we've got to be focusing on, not these distractions, not these, let's ban the pride flag. That's what our state legislature is working on. Our insurance bills have quadrupled. I pay more in insurance for this 2-bedroom apartment in a condo building with hurricane-proof windows than I paid for a 5-bedroom house in one of the most expensive suburbs of New York. And that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's both in property taxes and in insurance costs. My auto insurance in the state of Florida is 3 times what I paid in New York for the same car.
Yep.
And I haven't had a ticket. I haven't had an accident. I haven't had a parking ticket. It makes no sense. So the legislature should be working on that. Our governor should be working on that instead of running around trying to regulate the way somebody dresses or the way somebody expresses their gender or what flag they fly at their school.
It's all about who can get the best new headline, it seems. Whoever can grab the most attention. And I want to go back to a point you made. It seems like the Republicans really had a smart strategy in the latter years of the last century. They really did focus on the local level. They focused on the school board, city council, county commission, and they worked there. And that's exactly what we need to do. We need to get on the local level. Our national party needs to invest more into the state parties. We need to invest more in the local parties, and we absolutely need to take over control locally.
It started in 2010 with the Tea Party. I hate what they stand for, but what they did was exactly right. School boards, local boards, town boards, then state legislatures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a groundswell movement.
It was an actual grassroots movement.
Exactly.
That was the thing. Look where it took them.
Right. And that's what people say, that like then that's the question now. Should we have a tea party of the left? And it's like, no, not like the destructive portion of the tea party, but yes, the doing the grassroots, getting in, hands dirty, staying true to who you are, and not letting people sway you from
Yeah.
what your values are.
Well, look, these jobs at the local level, even in Florida at the state legislature, what we pay our state legislators is an embarrassment. $20,000? Give me a break.
Yeah,
Give
where
me
in
a
the
break.
state can you live on that?
You can't, you need people who are actually going to be able to dedicate their lives to making this state a better place. We're paying them $20,000. So what do you get? You get only the rich or people whose attention is divided.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's actually something that we're going to talk to in a future episode. A guest, Sabrina Boosbar, little promo, who ran, and we're going to talk to her about how hard it is and how expensive it is to run
Yeah.
campaigns, and how it does tend to, lead to people that are already well established in their lives and careers. So they're maybe older or they have more money and are maybe not as in tuned with those, deep values that I do think, especially, I moved down from Ohio about 3 years ago. And so this 60% threshold thing just for constitutional amendments actually blows my mind that we, both abortion and medical marijuana passed. We had a majority, but not a super majority. And that just, I mean, there are definitely, and another thing that I learned that was interesting about St. Pete elections in the city is that you vote at the district level to get your top two candidates, but then the whole city votes on those district candidates. And it's like, obviously, it's a bygone Jim Crow era rule. And there's so much of that down here still that I just don't think a lot of people realize, and how that is impacting the representation that you're able to get locally and nationally.
That's actually one of the most outrageous things about Florida politics. You have a way to disenfranchise everybody in probably two or three of the districts.
Hmm.
I don't remember how many districts there are in town, but you have these districts that would vote for Democratic candidates, but you have this citywide vote. So the majority takes out everybody who's in a district.
Yeah, it's interesting. I definitely am going to, I came up loving local politics. My dad's an elected official in Ohio and and before that was a union organizer, so I've been, getting down and dirty with this work for a long time. So I definitely want to like get into that more with St. Pete City Council and like how can we get rid of this? This
Well, you
can't,
have to amend the charter. You're going to
yeah,
have to amend the city charter. That's what's going to
right.
come down to. That's going to be hard to do.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a task. I wanted to ask you, what do you see as the most pressing issue or things that are facing the LGBTQ community here in Florida specifically, but also across the nation? I mean, obviously, we're seeing a lot of attacks specifically on transgender people, but is there anything else that you're
Well,
seeing?
they're coming for marriage equality. Anybody who doesn't see that is missing it. Um, they're going to step on the trans community as much as they can, and hopefully we'll be able to litigate around most of the mess. They know they can't get. They know that what they are doing, this pro-discrimination stuff, is not popular. Is there a majority that has been taken in by this sports stuff? Probably. But after years of propaganda, one-sided propaganda, and with Elon Musk pumping it out on X or Twitter, I don't know why I called it X there.
Yeah,
I insist on dead naming that app. Um,
exactly.
it's the only dead
Just like the
naming app.
Gulf of America,
The Gulf
Right.
of what?
the Gulf of
Gulf of
Mexico,
Mexico.
Thank you.
the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah. Um, the reality is that Americans don't want this. Americans know better. It is of no more consequence to this city where I serve on the Downtown Neighborhood Association's parks and traffic safety committees. They neither care that I'm transgender. It's, my law clients, they don't care. They want to know, are you a good lawyer? They want to know, are you actually making better parks? Are you making our traffic safer? That's where we should be focusing, not on on this external stuff that doesn't matter at all.
Yeah, exactly. Because focusing on these, it's so funny on these little issues, like you said, it's not helping insurance, it's not helping the housing crisis, it's not helping the price of eggs, any of that. And it's so funny that, I'm old enough to remember where small little c conservatism meant little government, small government,
Yeah,
stay out of your personal business.
the
And now
opposite
it's
now.
like,
It's the
they want you
opposite.
all up in the business.
Mhm. Yeah, it's small enough just to fit in it's just small enough to fit in your bedroom.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Frustrating. But look, the real problems, the things we should be focusing on are water supply, the traffic, the insurance, housing. What's going to happen to our economy when
Mhm.
tens of thousands of people are yanked out of it with these, draconian sweeps of people? We have a handyman in this building, wonderful old guy, 73 years old. And he told me that his 99-year-old mother, he's Cuban American and a citizen, but his 99-year-old mother, who has had a visa for a long time, got swept up and deported, even though she had a visa. 99 years old. And they swept her up and put her on Nicaragua.
Oh my gosh.
At least they were gonna put her in handcuffs, and they said, and one of the agents was like, she's 99, don't handcuff her.
Wow.
But these are the people who they say Trump was like, oh, we're only going after criminals. We're going after Tren de Aragua, the great fictional um, gang.
Right.
That one of my favorite things about the campaign. I was in New York City because I do a fair amount of traveling back and forth. I'm also a union person. I'm pension fund trustee for a union. So I'm up in New York a lot because that's where our offices are. I happened to be in New York at one of our pension fund meetings. Trump is in Madison Square Garden. I am probably 10 blocks away because our offices are just below Times Square, sort of 8 or 9 blocks from the garden. And I'm having dinner as he's making the speech. I'm sort of listening to it. And he's telling me that Tren de Aragua, armed gangs, armed men with machine guns have taken over Times Square. I'm in Times Square. I'm walking around. I'm like, I'm going on TikTok Live.
You're like,
I'm like,
here.
that idiot is down there telling people, here's Times, you see any? There's a police station over there in Times Square. You see tourists, you see the Disney characters, you see us. There's no armed gangs here. What's this man talking about? But he sold that lie and he's kept that lie going. So now they're running through Coconut Grove and Cayocho, sweeping up everybody and saying, "Oh, you're Tren de Aragua," taking hairstylists,
Yeah, I heard.
a
Yeah.
hairstylist with a tattoo from a Premier League football club that they said, "Oh, that's a gang." Only if you think that the Premier League is, the Chelsea Football Club is a gang. And as a Man City fan,
Maybe.
but
No.
I just
but
seen a
no,
story
no,
about a student getting swept up, a Middle Eastern student getting
Tufts.
swept up and
At
taken
Tufts.
by people in
Yeah,
cuffs and masks.
you can see the video. And what is she accused of? Well, she wrote about equality in the Middle East.
Hmm.
Give me a
Mhm.
friggin' break.
I saw that video
Awful.
too, and I saw the people recording it. Excuse me. And don't get me wrong, I'm grateful for the people that are recording it because we do need these moments. But like,
Yeah.
and I say this as a, cisgendered white lady sitting here in all my privilege. It's time to start using that. And like, I don't know, they were, not legal advice from anybody, but like those people they were not uniformed. They were masked. They were not providing identification. I mean, like,
Legal advice, don't go down that road.
I
Don't,
know,
legal
but like,
advice.
it's like we can't,
The
I
arrest,
mean, it's
the
just
arrest was
it's so bad.
lawful.
It's like, I hate but
We
anyway,
have to
yeah.
be careful here.
Yeah, oh
Yeah,
We
the
have to
yeah.
only
be
thing that
careful
we
here.
can do is absolutely
There was
record.
record.
It's yeah,
Look,
it's
I'm
so hard
horrified
to
by
see
what they
that.
did. I'm horrified by what they did, but how they did it was appropriate. I mean, they didn't do anything
Well, yeah,
unlawful that I saw. The pretext is the unlawful thing,
right.
the absurdity of the arrest in the first place. But, those people who are doing that job ought to have a conscience about it. I don't know if they do.
Yeah.
I just remember the Nuremberg trials as the child of a refugee from Hitler. The Nuremberg trials did not work out well for those who said we were only following orders.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm. Absolutely. Well, I do have another question for you.
Sure.
So one thing that we see here oftentimes is people say they want to get involved. What's your message to people that want to get involved and how to do so
Do
and where
it.
they should start?
Real simple message. Do it. And if
Yeah.
you want to get involved, if you're in the LGBTQ plus community, we have chapters of the Florida Democratic Party's LGBTQ plus Democratic Caucus in every major town, in every major county, and where it's not a major county, there are regional chapters.
Hmm.
Go to lgbtqdems.org and you can do the drop down, find the one closest to you. We will welcome you. We will welcome your activism. If you're not LGBTQ plus, go to the local Democratic Executive Committee. Look it up in whatever county. There is one in each of the 67 counties of the state of Florida. And if you're out of Florida, find the one that's in your county in your state. There is work to be done at every level. And it may be that you're good at postcarding, at texting. I mean, we have elections on April 1st, on Monday, as we're recording this, in 2 congressional districts, and one of them is surprisingly close. Surprisingly close. Look, even the people who have voted for DeSantis and the Republicans have realized after this craziness with war plans being sent out on an app to a reporter before the attack, with the craziness of these mass layoffs where they don't even know who they're laying off. They're just going, lay them off, and discovering that they've eliminated the people who do hurricane forecasts for the state of Florida.
Mhm.
With all that crazy, people are like, that's not what I voted for. These people genuinely are nuts. And they can send a message to Donald Trump. They can send a message to the nation by voting for Josh Weil, for voting for Gabe Valmont in congressional districts 1 and 6, if you happen to be in those districts, by voting out every one of these people who's going, hey, this Trump stuff, this is really good. Because it's not good for you. It's not good for the nation. It's not good for your neighborhood. And we got room for everybody. We got work for everybody. It is work, though. Don't get me wrong. It's work. And some of it isn't, it's volunteer work. Almost all of it. If you get elected to something, you might get a small stipend here in Florida. But in New York, the legislators are earning 6-figure salaries. Down here, they're earning $20,000.
That's wild. That's
Yeah.
yeah. And having to maintain the thing that people don't think about having that small of a salary of like, because I know some people are like, well, they're public servants. They shouldn't be making all that much money. True, but like they have to maintain a residence in the capital and in their
Mhm.
district. So like you can't like that's expensive.
Here's a question. And people do say, well, you're working public service, you shouldn't make that much money. You got to make a living wage.
Exactly.
You've got to make a living wage. If you do 40 hours of work, I mean, that's a fundamental of the Democratic Party. If you work 40 hours, you ought to make enough money that you can support your family.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be $250,000,
Right.
but $20,000?
Yeah.
Are you
It,
serious?
it gets worse. I remember I grew up in Brooksville, Florida, and I remember looking up, this was probably a decade ago at this point, but I looked up the salary of like city council members, and they make $4,000 a year.
We're doing so much work.
$4,000. So you know that they have other jobs, they have other responsibilities, they're making their money somewhere else, and they're not focused where they should be. So I absolutely agree
And
that
they
we
have conflicts
definitely
of
need to pay
interest
our
because of it. They have conflicts of interest that look, I want my state legislator to not be worrying about, ooh, if I vote for something that's good for Florida, but bad for the sugar industry, am I going to lose my race because they're going to contribute to my opponent?
Exactly.
Right.
You know, that's rough. And that's what we've got right now. We've got a legislature that's bought and paid for.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a governor who's bought and paid for.
Very nice.
And, you know, we as Democrats have to do a little bit better job here. And, when we talk about party leadership, we're having a big Democratic Party conference at the Hard Rock Hotel coming up. The Hard Rock Hotel is owned by the Seminole tribe.
Oh,
And
okay.
guess who the Seminole tribe have contributed millions of dollars to? Here's a hint. It's not the Democratic Party. It's the
Really?
Republican Party. Why are we patronizing them? This is where sometimes I get a little bit wacky,
Oh,
but we vote with our dollars just like we vote. Just like no Democrat in their right mind will ever again buy a Tesla, the
right.
Democratic Party should not be patronizing the Republicans' contributors.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that definitely comes from I think we get that more from the union mentality.
Yes,
It's, because when something went on
whose
strike,
side are you on?
yeah, exactly. If something went on strike, I remember growing up, I was really like when I was little, on the weekends having a pizza and a Pepsi was like my treat. And Pepsi went on strike for like 2 years when I was young. And my dad was like, nope, no Pepsi, not allowed. And
Good
I
for your
I was
dad.
so mad, but I didn't
Good for your
understand it then.
dad.
But now I'm like, nope, yeah, okay, all
And
right.
I'm still a Diet Pepsi girl. So,
Yeah.
but no, I got my start as a shop steward. So,
Yeah, awesome. All right. Well,
Yeah.
I think that
So
we can get into our next segment, which is our shutdown, our shout out or shut down segment, where you can either give a shout out to something positive and awesome that has happened in the world in this week, or a shutdown to something in particularly bananas that deserves to get called out. Christian, you can go first if you'd like. Oh no, did
So
I
I
put
just
you on
want
the
to talk
spot?
about this. I no, you didn't put me on the spot, but I gotta shut down because I cannot believe the lunacy that has happened over the past couple of days with this Signal app. So for those that don't know, we are actually on the Signal app. The LGBTQ statewide Dems, all of the leadership is on the Signal app. When you create a chat, you have to manually go in and make sure and click on who you're adding to that chat. Whoever set up this chat, why they were doing it in the first place on Signal, which is an unsecured app, in the first place is wild. How this person added a reporter and didn't notice is wild. Why these people were communicating these plans and now saying that it's not top secret
Not
war
classified.
plans or unclassified. It's all unclassified now. Also, the other part of this, there was apparently one that was in Russia while this chat was happening. So, actively in the Kremlin while this chat was happening, and the Kremlin has historically been trying to hack into the
Right.
Signal app, trying to get into that app. So that it just opens up so many national security problems. And the fact that this administration is making such light out of this, it's driving me crazy. It is absolute lunacy. And I will say this to anyone that will listen as long as I can, because our national security, like, ugh, I could go on and on. But anyway, that's my shutdown for this week.
Absolutely. That's super top of mind. I just can't stop thinking about email servers as well. And it just
Butter emails.
What
Butter
about
emails.
Well, let me say, as in my reporting career, I spent years covering the military and the Pentagon. Before that, when I was in college, I worked for McDonnell Douglas, which was an old defense contractor, and had a top secret clearance,
Oh wow.
which is, by the way, not that high a clearance.
Yeah.
But this is so outrageous on every level. Actual attack plans before the attack being sent out to anybody outside the chain of command is insanity. Sending it out to a wide group like this, and there were 18 people on that chat.
Yeah.
And Pam Bondi, our attorney general, our former Florida attorney general, is going, oh no, I don't see any crimes here. Excuse me.
Yeah. Well, she didn't
Well,
see
now they're
much
trying
many
to place
crimes
blame
at
on the reporter.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, maybe he hacked his way in. Stop. Mike Walls added him to him.
Yeah. Well, and and there's that whole thing. There was the whole narrative during Pete Hegseth's confirmation about his alcohol use. So it's like, what's this Mike Wells's alcohol use? Were you drunk adding the wrong people to the chat? Like, it's just, yeah, a lot of it is.
But Hegseth is the one who committed the outrageous act of putting our soldiers, our airmen, the people flying those aircraft, he gave 2 hours notice of where they were going and when they were taking off.
Mhm.
That's criminal. It's criminal. And that's the Secretary of Defense?
Right.
Come on.
And they're claiming it's not war plans or
Yeah.
it's not classified information.
Not classified. Well, maybe it wasn't, but if it wasn't, it should have been. And even if it
Absolutely.
wasn't classified, it was the most sensitive information that put our military people at risk by leaking it. He should have been fired, his clearance taken away to get anywhere, but he's a Fox News host.
Yep. Yep.
Laura, what's yours?
This week I'm gonna do, since as Kristen said, we are right before the elections on April 1st. I am gonna do a shout out to Gay Vilmont and Josh Wild. They are just running so hard and really doing everything they can to flip those districts. And and if we and I think they just withdrew Alyssa Slotkin's nomination, so I don't know if we flip these two, we'll be very close to getting Speaker Jeffries, and then that could really help a lot, stop a lot of this. We could do some sort of investigations if he was, the speaker. So that's my shout out. Everybody, if you're listening and you're in those districts, go to vote. If you're not in those districts, just go to their social media and share. You never know who is on your page that you might be influencing, that might be in that district. So that's my shout out.
Well, that's cool.
Your turn, Kristen.
And you meant Elise Stefanik. You said Slotkin.
Yeah.
Oh, Stefan, yeah.
Yeah, from New York's, I think,
Yeah.
3rd congressional
Yes.
district. It shows how scared they are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give a
They
shout
are
out.
terrified.
I'm going to give a shout out to every Democrat who is infuriated at the way the party isn't reacting to Trump, the way the party is sitting on its hands and not getting out there and getting in the face of everyone. And there are individual Democrats who are doing it. Don't get me wrong, but we know that this requires everybody to be standing up and going, oh, no, 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 no. You are not doing that to us. You are not doing that to our nation. You are not doing it to our neighbors. This is unacceptable. And every Democrat who's going out and going, no, let's make noise, who's going to a town hall, even when their congressperson doesn't show up,
Hello,
who's
Anna
going out
Paulin.
and demonstrating at a Tesla dealership
Mm-hmm.
and saying, no, we don't want swastikas. We don't want the people who are poisoning our entire media ecosystem with propaganda. Every Democrat who's standing up, you get a shout out from me, and let's keep doing it.
Awesome. That is so great. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kristen. I think we had a really great conversation. And it's really great to have someone that I think that's in the party that people get worried that, like you said, that we're not grounded people worried about the things that everyday people are worried about, like costs, insurance, housing, all that stuff. And you've proven that. Nope, that's exactly what we're here worrying about it, and we're the work we need to do to get that back to front of mind for the rest of the party.
Well, thanks for having me. You guys are
Yeah,
great. Let's keep going.
Absolutely.
absolutely. Before we jump off, is there anything coming up for the statewide caucus that you want to shout out or kind of
Well, we're
give a
gonna
promo
be
to?
texting. We're gonna be texting folks for the upcoming election. Obviously, Trans Day of Visibility is coming up this week too. You can bet that we're going to be visible. Um, nobody, no, trans people have always been here. We're not going anywhere. Um, you know, it doesn't really matter on a macro scale, but our lives are the same as everybody else. Um, and after that, we are going to be at the Democratic Party's Leadership Blue event. And then we will be having a fall membership meeting in person somewhere in the center of the state. Orlando and Tampa are the places that are vying back and forth. We've been doing a lot in Orlando, so we'll maybe go to Tampa.
Yeah.
But we'll see how that works out. We are going to have a very, very full agenda. There is a lot to do. And I should have mentioned, we are also now a chapter of the National Federation of Stonewall Democrats. For those who don't know, like Stonewall, okay, yeah. There was an organization called the Stonewall Democrats that years ago went defunct. We've resurrected it. There are chapters all across the nation. And our goal, I'm now the vice president of that group too, like I don't have enough to do. Our goal is to make to deal with the Gavin Newsom fallbacks, the Seth Moulton fallbacks, to remind Democrats that it is our core principle that equality is for everyone, and to make sure that they don't forget, that they don't start throwing people under the bus because they think, well, maybe Republicans will like us more, because they won't. They won't. So that's what we're up to. And please, LGBTQDems.org, come join us.
Absolutely. And real quick before we jump off, I do want to jump on the promo bandwagon. On June 8th, the Stonewall Democrats are holding our Pride and Progress dinner. So we will put the link to buy tickets in the descriptions. Right now, we have an early bird discount through March 31st, 2025. So grab your tickets as soon as possible. We're going to have a lot of announcements on who's going to be speaking and entertaining and things like that coming up. So get your tickets for that. But thank you again, Kristen.
Yeah, it's a Sunday.
Yep, Sunday, June 8th.
Oh, that's the day after World Pride in DC. That's where I'm going to be. Darn.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to. I'll have to talk about that.
Pride? Yeah. All right, we're going there. And then we're going to New York City Pride on the last Sunday, because we always do New York City.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, Kristen, so much. We really appreciate it.
See you soon.
Yes, thank you so much. And everybody have a good day, and make sure that you tune in again next week and download us wherever you get your podcast. Have a good night. Bye.